Hello, everybody. Let's see here. I'm working in a new studio, and I'm hoping you're hearing me right now. Let me switch over where I can see comments. Uh, Somebody give me a shout out in the comments there. Are you hearing me loud and clear? Anybody hearing me? Okay, Bob. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, guys, I'm working in a new studio and not a new environment, but I've got a lot of new toys in here, trying to make things better, trying to keep up with Patrick and Rich. They were really making me look bad in the laser maker's realm. So I've got some new toys, new cameras, new angles, and it liked to kick my butt yesterday. I was fit to be tied, but thankfully Patrick came to the rescue. He talked to me like I was a 3-year-old, calmed me down, and got everything straightened out. And I think everything's going to work like it's supposed to. But what we're going to talk about in this live stream is how to use living hinges and designing. And I'm actually going to design this. This is a obviously sanding disc holder. And this was inspired by a Laser Maker's Realm viewer on and comment on Facebook. But let's see what we've been chatting back and forth for quite a while. So I've already said hello to a lot of you. And guys, things are a little different tonight because normally this would be our time slot for Laser Maker's Realm. But we are switching that up. Laser Maker's Realm will be live tomorrow, Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And that is, we're going to give it a go for a few weeks and see how it goes. But according to the analytics on Facebook, on our channels, and I don't mean by a little bit, the vast majority of our viewers are on between 12 and 5 o'clock on Sunday. So we're hoping to see that time slot, which is totally counterintuitive to me because several of you have mentioned in the comments, you got NFL and a few other things going on. People are in churches, and but analytics state that that's the facts. I mean, that's when, and I mean, it's like 4 times the amount of viewers in that time period. So we're hoping to see a large increase in the viewers on Laser Maker's Realm. And we'll give it a few weeks to see how it goes. Who knows how long that'll last? It might be the new permanent spot. And, February, it may be a new time again. We'll see. But I want to show you what inspired this. And we're going to go into LightBurn, and I'm going to show you kind of like I did with the hexagonal light box. I'll design a little bit, come back and look at you for questions and try and address any issues before going too far down the road. And but this is a real simple build, and it's a lot easier than most of you probably think it is. It's not hard at all. It's not difficult. There are a couple of roadblocks that you have to watch out for, and we'll talk about those too. So, but before we jump into LightBurn, let's see here if I can make these transitions work right. I'm going to do that and just go auto. There we go. All right. So this is the post that inspired this build. Daniel, and I don't know if it's shuffling or shuffling, but if it's shuffling, I don't know. Or is it shuffling? I don't know. But he posted this in Laser Maker's Realm on Facebook and said, he's stumped. He builds his own boxes, but he can't figure out how to lay out the slots and tabs on a curve. And so he was curious about how to do that. And I just replied, it's actually quite simple if you do it with a living hinge. And so I knocked out a file pretty quick, in about 35, 40 minutes, and uploaded it to the Laser Maker's Realm and shared it with them, with anybody. I didn't test the file, and I knew better, but I did. I was a little bit cocky and thought that, it's pretty simple, no problems. Well, the next day when I come in and tried it, it didn't work. It was off by a little bit, and I'm going to show you in here why it didn't work and what you need to look out for when you're doing this and the obstacles to avoid, because there is always more than one way to accomplish something in LightBurn. There's not just one way to do it. I say it all the time. If anybody ever tells you, well, this is right and this is wrong, well, if you both got to the same spot, how's one right and one wrong? And am I going to maybe take a few extra steps to do something? Maybe. Are you going to see some tools and some tips that you haven't seen before or never fully understood? Probably. But back over to here, this was on December 14th. He posted that. Well, on the 15th, that's Daniel. Hey, Daniel. And Daniel's in the stream. He said he couldn't wait. He couldn't stand it. Had to go make it tonight. So he went and made one. And looks like he maybe tried to put a flat bottom on there so it would stand up. But that's a little difficult to do with the living hinge. But then he modified it. He took, now that was, and this was, I guess, his first attempts on doing something with living hinges of his own design. And that is a really neat way to organize them and set them up. There are a couple of little, flaws in here that could be made better. The living hinge is a little bit rough, but I'm going to show you how to create your own living hinge so that you don't have any problems, because living hinges aren't great to just scale up. They're not really that scalable. They need to be more rigid instead of done like what he did there. But let's jump into LightBurn now and take a look at, let's see, I'm going to close that and open that and now switch. And now, okay, you hopefully are seeing my LightBurn. So the one thing that I know that the one absolute is that the sanding disc is 5 inches. And we'll come back here. So I know the sanding disc is 5 inches, and I know that I need a lip that's taller than the diameter of that disc. So that's where I started. I started with trying to determine that width and that shape there. So back to LightBurn. So if I got a 5-inch disc and I want an inch gap, I started out with drawing a circle, a 3-inch circle, and then I drew out my, 3-inch circle. Let's lock the aspect ratio, go ahead and make it 3 inches, and then do an offset of an inch and say, okay, so now I've got a 5-inch, and if you look there up here in the top, the width, I told it to do an inch, but it didn't quite go an inch. It's 4.9999. So I'm going to go ahead and round that to 5 just because I'm that way. And we'll put that in the middle of the table there. Now, with that done, that's one way of generating them. Another way is you just simply hold your shift key and draw out a circle, continue to hold it, draw out another circle. And this is going to make sense to you in a minute why I'm doing this. This is one of those roadblocks I was talking about. So we're going to take that circle, we're going to make it the 5-inch circle. And we'll make this one the 3-inch circle. Didn't do it. 3-inch circle. There we go. And now center those up. Now those look identical, right? In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and group that one and group that one. We'll put them at the same level with each other. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle and bisect those and cut them in half. So I'm just going to draw out I got to select my rectangle tool, draw out a rectangle. And now I'm going to make it a height of 2.5 inches. And I want to make sure that it's long enough to go past both of those circles. And now, nope. Group those. Put that rectangle in the middle of that. Now, these are grouped. And this is going to be my cutting tool. And I want to keep these lower halves. I want to omit that. So I put the rectangle or my cutting tool around the pieces that I want to keep. So I select my pieces first, hold my shift key, then select that rectangle, and then come up here to tools and cut shapes, or Alt-Shift-C, but cut shapes. Now what that's done is you see the Vegas lights or the ants running around there. Those top halves are selected. So now you can just hit your delete button and delete them. Now, those are identical, right? They should be identical. But this is how I messed up the very first file that I created, and it didn't work. Because if you look, we're going to ungroup all this. And that 5-inch circle cut in half, that should be an arc of whatever, a 2.5 inch high arc. But if we go to our ruler and actually come in here and measure the segment lengths, if we look here, that segment length, and I will try to get it as close as I can. So that's going from the top to the bottom. That's, oh, look at there. There's a problem. So it's not exactly half. That segment length is 3.8261, and that one is 3.8. They're not identical. You've got these little bitty pieces in here, and that's a problem. Now let's see what this one is. This one is 3.8773 and 3.8773. These are identical. And the difference between this grouping right here and this grouping, this pair right here was done by creating the first initial 3-inch circle and then doing an offset of 1 inch to create the 5-inch circle. This was created by using the primitive tool to draw out a 3-inch circle and then draw out a separate 5-inch circle. So these started out as 2 primitive shapes. They were 2 circles. This was actually 1 circle and 1 line that was in the shape of a circle. An offset is not a primitive shape. An offset is not a circle. And when you go back, and if we go, in fact, we'll undo it and go back before I cut them, and we'll get rid of that square. We look at just that outer piece. In fact, let's look at this one first. And we go to nodes. You don't see any nodes because it's a primitive shape. You have to convert it to a path. And when you do, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes. And that's all that there is. But if you look at this one, this is I've got a selector tool. This one is the offset of the original 3. Put that back in the middle. And then we go to nodes. I do not have to convert it to a path because it's already a path, because it's not a primitive shape. It is a line in the form of a circle. And if you look down here, there's these extra nodes that are in there. And that's what screwed up my initial design. And I wanted to show you this because while you could achieve those arcs in 2 different ways, you could get to what looked like the same result. They weren't. And what happens in a few minutes when I show you how to, because the tricky part of this, if there is a tricky part, is how long does this need to be? How long does that piece got to be to wrap around there? And well, you're going to measure those arcs and those tangents. And when those are little bitty pieces hiding in there and you don't see them or not aware of them, it throws your whole design off. How do I know? Because I screwed it up. And I learned that by screwing up. I learned everything I just showed you whenever I screwed up that first attempt. So we're going to get rid of that. These are the ones that we want to keep. I'm going to, in fact, I'll just draw another rectangle really quickly and make it 2.5 inches tall, 2.5. And let's draw that out to there. Group them back. Put that in the center of that, at the bottom of that, so it's 2.5 inches. And again, those are grouped. That's the shape that we want to cut. This is the piece down here we want to keep. The rectangle is our cutting tool. We select our shape first and then hold our shift and select that and go to tools and cut shapes. That will select this up here, and we can just hit the delete button and get rid of it. Okay. Now I'm going to switch back. Does anybody have any questions about that? That's pretty simple so far. And I got to get passed down here to everybody. Very good, very good. Any questions? I'm going to count to 10, and then we're going to jump right on because we're going to try and make this go quick tonight. Okay. All right. Good. No questions. All right. So now we're going to switch back. Now this is the bottom half of that tray. Now I need to figure out the back piece and this top over here. And to do that, now I know that this should be an inch gap between them. But if I didn't know that, this is how you can figure that out. These are already grouped. I'm going to leave them grouped for right now, but we'll ungroup them in a few minutes. I'm going to come back here to my square tool, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come right down here to this inside one until I get my crosshairs. Once I get my crosshairs, I want this to be a perfect square. And to do that, I'm going to hold the shift button and just drag it straight across to this line until I get the crosshairs. Now I can release, and I'm done. I've got a perfect square. And now if I look right there up in the top, there it is, 1 inch by 1 inch. And that's what it should be since this is a 1 inch spacing. Now over here, I do not want to have it to be a square, but I can still do the same thing. Get my crosshairs, draw a straight line, come over here and get those crosshairs. And now select that, unlock my aspect ratio, and I'm going to make this one 3 inches tall. But now I want to show you something, and I'm doing this screw up here on purpose to show you how you use the anchor points. I've tried to show you those in the past, and sometimes it doesn't always come through. Right now, you see the anchor point is in the center of my design, of these radio buttons up here. Anchor point's right there in the center, and I'm changing my height to 3 inches. Or not, that was the width. So undo, got to change the height. But now you see, it's no longer positioned correctly. So now I've got to either readjust all that, or if you know in advance, that's what these anchor points are for. I designed that from this corner right here. That is anchored. That's where I want that to be anchored at. So I'm going to come up here and select that lower left anchor there to anchor that design right there, and now change the height to 3 inches. And now nothing moved. It's up where it needs to be, and that's the positions that everything needs to be in. Now I'm going to select, that's already selected. I'm going to select this square. I'm going to convert it to a path, both of them, edit, convert to a path. Then go into node editing. And while I'm in node editing, I'm going to come down here to these two lower lines and just hover over them anywhere where I get those little half crosshairs and hit the letter D. The letter D is in David or delete. Not the delete button, but the letter D. And now that got rid of both of those. Now we look, we've got our basic shape going on. These are grouped. We need to ungroup them. And now when we look here, let's see, if I select this whole piece right here, if you look down here at the bottom of LightBurn, it shows you that there are 5 objects right there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a 5th one in there somewhere. We need to create, obviously, one piece out of that. And all you have to do is select that whole thing. And if you look, let's see, all right, where there's 5 objects. I was looking to see where the ants changed. I don't see them changing direction. But right now with that selected, I'm going to hold Alt and the letter J. And if you paid attention there, the ants changed direction. I'll undo that. So right now you see the ants are running down. Sometimes when you've got multiple pieces, where those pieces line up, they will actually be running into each other. But with all those selected, and I hit Alt-J, you can watch those ants change direction. And that lets you know that it just did something. But you can also look right down here at the bottom of LightBurn, and it no longer says 5 objects. It says 1 object. That is now 1 solid piece. welded together. And that is the basic shape for the side of the box. Have I lost anybody yet? Anybody got any questions on anchor points, Alt J, node editing, the letter D? All right, the next step we need to do is add the slots and tabs to this side piece. And it's like, okay, well, where do they need to be? Well, position them on this piece now is not as crucial as the placement of where they're going to be on the living hinge. But I like them to look good and spacing be right. So I keep in mind, I had that 3-inch piece on the back, the 1-inch piece on the front, and I'm going to design my tabs according to those dimensions, because those tabs have got to be on those flat areas. So I generally design with 3mm wood. So I'm going to switch temporarily. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to switch. I'm still in the inches up here. And I'm going to draw out a rectangle. And I want that rectangle width to be 3mm. Well, without having to switch that, I can just come right up here and put in 3mm. And that's going to convert that to 3mm. It shows you now in inches, but that's 3mm. And I want the height to be 1/2 inch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and grab those crosshairs and drag it up there and snap it right to the corner of that piece. Now, this is a 3-inch flat side that I want those tabs to be on. And I want them spaced out to look good and also be functional and as strong as possible. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here to my gears, and I'm going to change my arrow move to 1/2 inch. And I'm going to move that down 1/2 inch. And I'm going to start there. And now I'm going to create an array of 3 columns with a 1/2 inch spacing between them, or 3 rows, I should say, 3 rows with a 1/2 inch Y spacing. Now those are a 1/2 inch from the top, and they're spaced out evenly. But if I look at where this one landed, it's right at the very bottom of that 3-inch tangent. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to grab them, group them, go back to my gears, and put that at 1/4 inch. Say okay. And now just use my arrow up. And now that's 1/4 inch from the bottom of that 3-inch tangent and 1/4 inch from the top of the piece. I'm going to ungroup that temporarily. Control D, duplicate that, arrow it over. Group those back together. Control D, duplicate them, and I'm going to put them on a toolpath. That duplication's on a toolpath, and I'm going to arrow it over here because that's going to be just what it is, a toolpath. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to Control D, duplicate it, put that on a toolpath because I'm going to need that just as it is to get my measurements in a few minutes. Now I need this piece, and I'm going to dock it right up there, snap it into that corner. And since I just changed my move to 1/4 inch, and I won't, that's a 1/2 inch, and I've only got 1 inch to play, I'm just going to arrow down one time. And now that's centered over that 1-inch piece. So now with that selected, hold my shift button. And now before I do that, I'm going to touched on this with the other box, but maybe not everybody was there for that. If I ungroup all these and select just those 4 tabs, again, if you look down here at the bottom of LightBurn, it shows those are 4 objects. And when you're going to use your Boolean tools will not work with multiple objects. They will only, you can only add and subtract 1 or 2 objects. You can subtract A from B, or you can weld A and B, or get a difference of A from B, but you can't do it with multiple objects. So what you have to do is we're going to group all this. Right now you see it's 4 objects. If I group that, those 4 objects now, those 4 shapes are now one object. And by becoming one object, now you can hold your shift key and select the main piece. Well, select that. Is it all grouped? Yes. And then that. Wow. Now see, this is the joys of going live. What have I got wrong? Is that not a closed shape? Edit. Closed path. All right, that's an open path somewhere. Because this hasn't happened any time I've designed this. And how I knew that was a problem is if you look, I grab those 4, which is actually one object, and then hold my shift key and grab that. My Boolean tools are still grayed out. I cannot weld that together. And when you can't weld that together, that's telling you there's an issue. And by selecting just this piece and going up here to edit, anytime you have the option to close a path, then it's an open path. Sometimes just clicking close path will work. And let's see if it's grayed out now. And it is. That took care of that problem. But another thing you can do, because closing path does not always work. So if I look now, that should be open. Nope, undo, undo. Undo, undo. Now, let's see if that's an option again. Edit. No. Did not go back far enough. Let's see. Edit. Nope, whatever. That closed path is done. But sometimes closed path, you can fight it and fight it and fight it. And you can actually go in and you can close path with a tolerance. But I've had that give me some adverse results where if you tell it to close with it, then it puts some crazy line that goes off somewhere that you didn't want it to be. So another thing you can do is instead, when it doesn't want to close a path with that piece that's an open path, do a 0 offset. Do a 0 offset, and that'll create that duplicate, and it will close the path. But this now is a closed path, and if we select those, now you see our Boolean tools are no longer grayed out. I can just weld those together, and those tabs are in place. I can now say Control D, duplicate it, and use my less than symbol to rotate it counterclockwise, and then arrow it over, and those are in position for me to cut out. I'm going to grab those and slide them off the tool bed for right now. Those are designed and ready to go, and I'm ready to start working with these tool paths to start figuring out my living hinge. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions? I see some people going, okay, wow, that's new to me. You know, all kinds of new things going on here. Does anybody have any questions, or have I lost anybody? Have I blown anybody's mind? They're like, wait a minute, back up that thing. Let's see here. Could you do the same thing with the weld button? I'm sorry, Chicago Bob. I'm not sure which same thing with the weld button, but you've seen me weld those together, but you can only weld them once they're a group. You can do each individual piece, but I'm not sure exactly because I missed your question before we got down too far gone. Lori, whoa, you just blew my mind with that entry of 3 millimeters in the height, and that auto conversion is cool. Yeah. And Lori, not only can you enter the 3 mm, if you're working in metric, you can do 3 IN and it will convert from metric to inches. You can also use that as a calculator to where if you needed to combine the figures, or it's like, okay, well, I've got a 0.183 inch and I need to add a 1/4 inch. Well, just say plus 0.25. It will actually do the calculation for you. Yeah, that's what, and in fact, that's what Patrick was saying. Thank you, Patrick. You can also enter math operations. I'm not so hot at math, but good to know. That's just, wow. Yeah, it'll do it for you. And good. Thanks. I'm glad I got there, Bob. Answered that question for you. Okay, that's new to me. Great info already. Thanks. Thanks, Hobo. Man, thank you guys for being here. 0 offset to close is that always viable? I tell you, for a lot of people who send me files that they're having problems with and they can't get any issues, or they're having too many issues and they can't get it to work. That's the first thing I do. I will take that file and create a 0 offset of that entire file, and it will almost always eliminate any anomalies that LightBurn doesn't like, especially if they are files that were generated outside of LightBurn and now you're bringing them into LightBurn. There are times that 0 offset does or can create some problems of its own, like I showed you initially, because the 0 offset, when you're doing an offset of a primitive shape, it does not create a duplicate larger primitive shape. It is now a line instead of a primitive shape. That line is in the shape of a circle, but it's not a circle. So sometimes but more often than not, 0 offset is your best friend. No worries. I'll be watching it a few times later. Yeah, Mike, I tried. The last live stream was a spur of the moment live stream. Did not plan to go forever and ever, and it went 2 hours. I'll stay as long as people are wanting to see stuff and learn stuff. But I'm trying to make this one go a little quick. But I don't want to be so fast that I'm not able to address things. And that's why we stop and do this. Let's see here. Oh, wow. What we got going on here? Kevin, thank you. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you for the super sticker. And Richard stepping up there, $19, $20. Thank you, guys. I haven't even passed the plate yet. I will, but I haven't passed the plate yet, and you're already. Thank you. Let's see. This is certainly one for saving to watch over and over, and it will be available on replay. A lot of great information. It creates a path, not a primitive. Exactly. Yeah, Chris, the offset creates a path, or like I said, a line, not a primitive shape. Hey, Clack, I'm just going to send my files over for repair. Hey, I do a lot of that, man. I really do. And I actually enjoy it because this was actually, I don't know if you were here in the beginning, but this particular design, which is just this little stupid sanding disc holder, was inspired by somebody in Facebook group wanting to know how to do slots and tabs on a curve. Well, that inspiration inspired this. And I said, you know what? This would be something that a lot of people will probably appreciate learning how to do. And I had no plans to do this, and it came out of left field. Well, fixing these other designs and shapes, that helps me find what is wrong with these files, and then I teach people what to look for. So yeah, send them to me, man. I'll be glad to look at it. Big shot. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I want to keep moving with the design here. Thank you, Mario. I appreciate it. You just solved me several problems. Thanks. You are most welcome, and you did thank me. So thank you. And Chicago Bob, you're generous as always. What are you saying there, Chris? Preparing files for others has the advantage of someone not seeing the obvious. Yeah. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees if you're so deep into it. But I tell you guys, for every one of you, if you struggle with the file before you start pulling your hair out or screaming, just select the whole thing and do a 0 offset and see what happens. You'd be surprised at how many times that fixes up about all the issues. All right, so now we're going to jump back over to LightBurn, and we're going to look at how I determine how long this piece needs to be. How long does this need to be, and where on the piece does that living hinge need to be placed in order for it to function correctly? And that is what we're going to do now. Let's switch. All right, so I made a copy of that first piece before I put the slots and tabs on it, because I'm going to need to know the measurements of each one of these segments in order to be able to determine the length of that piece as it wraps around that whole piece. So I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to look at each segment on the outside of this. And I'm also going to open up my calculator. So I've got there, I have a segment. We know that's 3 inches because I added 3 inches there. We know this is 1 inch because I added 1 inch there. And because I learned about not doing the offsets, that these 2 tangents, that there are only 2 tangents and they are equal 3.9265 and 3. No, they're not equal. Look at that. I just seen that. 3.9265 and that one's 3.9275. It's off by a couple thousandths. Let's see if there's an oddball tangent in here anywhere. And there's the 3 millimeter or 3 inch, and there's nothing between that 3 inch. And I come down here and there's nothing there. And I'll go up here and nope, there's nothing there. It's just a slight variation in the roundness of that circle. But what I'll do, come to my calculator. I know that's 1 inch, so I'm going to say 1 inch plus, and this one is 3.9265 plus. Did I get that right? Yeah, 39. Okay, and then there, and then plus 3.9275 plus the 3 inches. So 11.854. 11.854. So I'm going to draw out a rectangle and tell it its height needs to be 11.854. Is that right? 11.854. Yep. Now I need to make it however wide I want it to be in order to stack my, however thick I want it to be for those stacks of sanding paper. And I'm going to go with 3 inches. And so I'm going to make sure my aspect ratio is unlocked so I don't change my height. And I'm just going to tell it to go 3 inches wide. So now there is the total length of that segment that's going to wrap from that corner all the way around to that corner. But now I need to know where my living hinge is going to be placed. Well, this is actually extremely easy. We know that this is a 3 inch flat space and we know this is a 1 inch flat space. So I'm going to draw out a rectangle here. I got to select my rectangle tool. We'll draw out a rectangle here and a rectangle here. And I will give that the dimensions of 3 by 1 and give this one 3 by 3. And why 3 by 3? Because this is 3 inches in length here, and this is 3 inches wide. 1 inch straight edge here, 3 inches wide. So now with that selected, I'll pick that. In fact, what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and put this on my cut path so we can see it a little better. But I'm going to leave this on a tool path, and I'm going to put it in center top. Select that one and put it in center bottom. So now that space in between there is all living hinge. And I can actually, if I wanted to, just get my crosshairs right there. And I didn't mean to move it. I meant to draw a rectangle, get my crosshairs and draw a rectangle down to those and put that on the tool path. And then I could eliminate those other tool paths. And that's the only one tool path that I need. But that's the size of the living hinge right there. So I'm actually through with this piece right here. That can go bye-bye. But I'm going to need those because those are going to have to be positioned up top, and I might put one down here in the bottom. In fact, we'll go ahead and do that now. We'll go ahead and put those on a cut path. I will ungroup, duplicate that, move it down here. That's going to go at the bottom. Group these back together. And I'm going to, got those selected. I'm going to hold my shift button and I'm going to select this 3 by 3 toolpath up here. And I want to tell it to align to the horizontal center. And then I'm going to align it to the inner left of that. That's not where I need it, but now it's centered and it's in a fixed position that I know where it's at. And I have my moves set to 1/4 of an inch. So now I can just select just those, and one arrow in moves it in 1/4 of an inch. Control D to duplicate it, and then hold my shift key, select the toolpath again, align it to the right, then select only that, and one arrow in puts that 1/4 inch in. So now those are where they need to be. Now this one, I will do the same thing. Here, I'm going to align it to horizontal center, and then align it to the left, and select just that, one arrow in, Control D, select just that toolpath, align it to the right, and then select just that slot and move that in 1/4. Now the slots are exactly where they need to be, height-wise, position-wise, to line up with these tabs. Now all I have to do is create a living hinge. Any questions? Okay. All right, some more super stickers here. Lewis, thank you very much. And Lori, I'm actually kind of mad at you. Thank you for this one. But guys, Lori sent my puppy a gift on Chewy, and she got some really good treats. And now she don't want to eat her dog food. She likes her treats better. She likes her, and her dog food's not dog food. I fixed this dog real chicken breast that I eat, solid chicken breast to cut up and mince them up. And she don't want to eat that. She wants to eat these treats instead. So thank you, Lori. Now I've got a spoiled dog. Now we're getting to where I am having a problem. Okay, Chris. Well, hopefully we're going to resolve any problems you've got going on here. And Bordello, the calculator, is the calculator in LightBurn? No, I've got that calculator. That's the Windows calculator. And that's what Lewis said. No, the calculator is on his desktop in the taskbar. And I just opened up the calculator, and it populated right on the top of the screen there. Thank you, Rick. Much appreciated. And guys, I still haven't passed the plate yet. All right. Thanks for helping me yesterday via video. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Hopefully you got where you needed to be. And folks, what he's talking about, when people reach out to me on Laser Maker's Realm or HoboWithWood.com or HoboWithWood@gmail.com with a problem like this stream I'm doing right now, I've got a special stream that's Hobo's World that when I'm in the shop and I'm available, I'll connect with you, and you and I'll get together in a real time and look at your problems and address them instead of me just fixing them. Maybe show you where the issue's at, because you teach a man to fish versus you giving a man a fish. Let's see here. Thank you. Jesse, thank you. Appreciate you. What are you talking about? Lots of questions that you don't have answers for. LOL. Lots of questions. Well, you got questions that I don't have answers for. Is that what you're saying? Well, yeah, I'm sure that's the honest to God truth. You made it look so simple. Well, it is actually quite simple. It's having the ability to see it in hearing. And here's a scary place, folks. You just don't know. But if you can seeing it, hearing it, and then recreating it, but just learning how to use those tools to manipulate LightBurn, it's not that difficult. Like I said, by the end of this, and if you may have to go watch it again, because I'm trying to go quick, but it's not hard at all. LightBurn has a built-in calculator that works in most input fields. Yeah, but and that's what we demonstrated earlier, Chris, where you can just do your math in those fields. But when you're trying to add up all those tangents, there's no way to do that. Yeah, you laugh at me. I prefer treats to meals too. Well, yeah, that's true. All right. All right, and one last super thanks at this point. And in fact, I'll go ahead and guys turn this off, hide that. Banners, show. So if any of you are wondering about supporting the channel and being a regular contributor, there listing at the bottom ways that you can contribute to the channel. Some folks really don't like going through Google and going through YouTube. So I have the option of the PayPal Me, which is listed in that scroll, and also Zelle. Now, Zelle is really cool. Most banks already have it in your online banking. And when you use Zelle, I get 100% of those donations. When you go through Google or YouTube, they get 30% of that. You know, I don't get all that. But thank them for supporting this and making this possible. So I'll leave. Now I'm passing the plate. I'll leave that running there for a little bit. It's also got my email on there. Now let's get into designing the living hinge. So back to LightBurn. All right. So this is a 3-inch wide piece. And I am all about being symmetrical. I want things to look, not only function, but I want them to look as well or better than they function. So, and then before we design that, when I'm working with living hinges, I take into consideration the thickness of my material on how I'm going to design my living hinge. I'm designing this to where it's going to work well with 3mm wood. And I want it to be as strong as possible, but also have as much flex as possible and maintain that flexibility. And there's no scientific proof for this. I haven't seen any math for this, but the way that I think this works, it's going to be strongest if you keep it so that when you look at the cross section of one of those cuts, that it's no less than a square. So my gaps between my living hinge are not going to be any narrower than the thickness of the wood. So when you look at that cross section of those, if that focus, those are little bitty tiny squares all the way down through there. So with that, when I set up my spacing, I'm basing it off the thickness of my material, which in this case, I'm basing it off 3mm. And I've got a 3-inch wide piece, and I want to have 3 lines going across it, 3 solid lines. So now we're getting into math again. And I'm going to open up my calculator, and we'll clear it all out. And what do we know for sure? We know that we have 3 inches. And 25.4 millimeters equals 1 inch. So 3 times 25.4 millimeters, 3 inches is 76.2 millimeters. That's the total width. And if I'm going to have 3 solid lines going across my living hinge, that means I'm going to have 2 gaps. And if my gaps are 3 millimeters, I'm going to subtract 6 millimeters. So now that I've got 6 millimeters subtracted from there, I've got the total distance of what those 3 lines will be. So now just divide it by 3. So 23.4 millimeters is the length of one of my lines. So I'm going to come up here to my line tool. I'm going to start a line, hold my shift, and draw out a line. And now I can select that and just tell it to go 23.4 millimeters. Not 20. I'm in inches, and I'm going to stay in inches. 23.4 mm. And there we go. Now I'm going to grab that and bring it up here to the top of that tool path. Get it right in there. And now if I do an array, 3 columns, and I'm going to switch over to millimeters now, because I don't know if you can do the conversion here, but we're going to do 3 columns with an X spacing of 3 millimeters. And right now it's kind of hard to see because they're right on that tool path. But those 3 lines start at the end of the edge and end at the edge with 3 millimeters in between them because we did all the math to begin with. And I just change something. Let's cancel that. I did that with my scroll button and didn't mean to. So array, 3 of them. Done. Now that's 3mm spacing. That's one line. Now, if I'd go to 2 rows, I need to have that 3mm spacing again. But now those are just stacked on top of each other. And that's not a living hinge. We got to come over here and shift by half. So click shift by half. And now we're starting to see the semblance of a living hinge. But these are not going over here to the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another column to extend that out so that I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 with this one protruding behind it. It'll make sense in a minute. But now I'm going to come down here to where I can see this line on this toolpath. And I'm just going to come here to rows. And I'm just going to hold that number until it populates all of those necessary rows. And I'll go back 1. And that's going to work. And now, one flaw, not a flaw, but one thing that's going to change in LightBurn 1.5, thanks to yours truly. Right now, when you do a grid array, you've got your original piece up here that's selected. And when you say OK, you're going to have just that piece selected. There is nowhere to check so that it selects your new array instead of just that single piece. So when you say OK, you're back to that one piece. But in version 1.5, that new option will be there so you can select your end result. But now what we need to do is come up here and just drag from left to right and get all of those pieces of that living hinge and group it. And now that that's grouped, I can come over here and grab the outer rectangle and tell it to go to center. And nope, center's not what I want. What I'm going to do is we're going to take, I'm going to turn off these toolpaths. There. I'm going to, and actually, now I need to see that toolpath. I'm going to get those 3 lines, 3 solid lines. Actually, you know what? I forgot. There's an easier way to do this. Ungroup those. What it is, I don't need these end pieces right here, these protrusions. So I'm going to get rid of that whole column by selecting just that and hit delete. There, that's where I screwed up. And now I don't need these. Delete. Group all that. And now center that up. I'm still not doing what I wanted to do. I'm going to line it to the left. That's what I want to do. Sometimes it ain't firing on all 8 cylinders. So by aligning it to the left, that put that solid line all the way to the edge, and that ends with that solid line at the edge. But now I've got this one little piece that hangs out. Well, we can use our cut tool to get rid of that. So now what I've got to do is I've got to duplicate this outer perimeter, because if I use this as my cut tool, it's going to disappear. In fact, I'll show you. I'm going to select my array and then select that outer perimeter and use the cut tool and say cut shapes. Now my outer perimeter is gone. So when you use a shape as a cut tool, it disappears. So when you need to do that, you need to select it and do a duplicate. Control D, duplicate that. Then select your array, hold your shift button, select that outer shape, hit your tools, cut shapes. That will leave you the remaining out here that you don't want. Hit your delete button. Ah, dadgummit, it's still not lined up right. I should not have deleted that other piece over there when I did it. But you know what? How easy that is. There. And I've done this so many times, group that. And now with that, like that, I'm going to position that right on the edge. And that's moving. You can't tell it's moving, but it's moving ever so slowly. I'll move, change my gears. Not that stupid settings. Not that. Come on, silly. Get your fingers right. 0.002. Say okay. And now move that in like so. And now I can do what I did to begin with that I did wrong. Duplicate, Control D, and grab, and then hold Shift, grab that and cut shapes and delete. And now that's centered up like I want it. That's the symmetry I was looking for. So I'm sure I've probably lost a few of you because I got lost in that myself just then. Oh, all right. Let's see here. Mine's showing 8. How are you seeing 52? Mine's showing 8. How are you seeing 52? 52 light. Y'all tell them get those numbers up. You know, some of the people might be watching. I don't know if everybody's watching on YouTube, but I don't know because the way I shared this in Facebook, I don't know if you can watch it in Facebook right now. I don't know. So it may be different lights in different places. At Bordello, after a week of learning something, it becomes easy as it looks. Daniel, thank you for the super sticker, and thank you for this inspiration. And because, like, without your desire to have that, hey, we wouldn't be doing this right now. We'd be doing something different. So thank you. Ralph says I've learned a lot from you and Laser Maker's Realm. Thank you. Does PayPal take a cut? It's kind of crazy. If person to person PayPal, I don't think they take a cut. But I'm actually Fortner Investments in my PayPal, and they take a cut. But hey, do what's best for you. If you prefer to use PayPal, use PayPal, and it is what it is. PayPal is not as much as Google as YouTube. Refresh your player window; it'll show up. I'm not sure what you guys are doing. Oh, you're still talking about the likes. Wow, didn't realize it wasn't accurate. I haven't paused it. Thank you. Oh, I guess y'all still talking about the likes. I'm late. I'll have to watch the replay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. That's going to take several reviews. Yeah, because I am trying to go through this kind of quick. But that's the beauty of this. You can back it up and watch it, and you can see. And I'm showing you my goofs. I'm showing you my screw-ups. I ain't perfect. But I got there. I got there. Now, let's see. I think that's actually, yeah, that's done. Let's jump over here back to the LightBurn. I'm going to come down here. Drag that down to the bottom, grab those, bring it over here to the bottom. And now, what's going on there? I love the screw ups. It gives me the confidence that I can do it. Yep. And then weird, YouTube didn't block the above comment. I don't know what comment. Did I miss something that needed to be blocked? I didn't see it. You gotta love people. Somebody mentioned in the Laser Maker's Realm the other night that they weren't seeing their laser frame whenever they had the lid open, and they had a magnet in place. If you were in this stream right now, I learned this today too. This works but only when you're telling it to fire above 1%. If you've got the fire button turned on, but only at like 0.5% or 0.75, then it's not going to show up. Your fire button has to be greater than 1%. You don't want to go much better than that because you don't want to start making any marks. All right, so now I'm going to check my frame on this. Let's see here. Go back. Check this frame. Laser frame. And I'm using scrap material here, and I just want to make sure that everything's going to be where she needs to be. And that's a little high. Yep, we got room to bring that down. And just double check that. And we're going to start. And let's see here, a new toy. Go here, and here, and picture one. Well, I ain't figured that part out yet. So we'll go back to here. All right, so while that's cutting out, so I just designed that in real time, and we're going to cut it out and see if it'll fit together if it doesn't take too long. But the first one I did, I showed you in the beginning. If you guys that joined in late, I showed how I did it the first time, and it didn't work. And it was because I used offsets instead of starting with primitives, and it did some screwy things when trying to take my measurements. And this piece came out about a millimeter or two short. It wouldn't fit. So anybody got any questions here? I love the screw ups. Yes. It is Hobo. It is HoboWithWood on PayPal. Is it HoboWithWood on PayPal? Scrolling here across the bottom, it's PayPal. PayPal.me. It'll show up here in a second because I don't even remember. PayPal.me/YouTube Hobo. PayPal.me/YouTube Hobo. Crafting with Gene. Is it scrolling across? Oh, yeah. HDL. Thanks, Jeremy. And there you go. See how you guys are just on top of all of this. You don't even need me. You don't need me. Thanks, Steve. You taught me a lot. Made a few of your files. Thank you, Robert. And guys, this right here is probably, it may not even be a practical application for you. You may not have an orbital sander. You may not use sanding disc that you got laying all over your shop. And these, and the 3D printed version he had, someone had glued that or adhered it to the inside of a cabinet door. And that's what this design is ideally for, to mount it, because it, and it'll sit, but it's got a round bottom. And if you try to make a flat base on it, now you've pushed your disc up because that's flattened that, pushed it up. You could make a base with a cradle in it that would sit in if you needed to, but I like the idea of being able to mount them and have them out of the way. But while this file may not be something that you can use, learning these techniques that we've gone over tonight, as far as how to position the slots and tabs, how to measure using the Alt-J for join, all those different things, it'll help you with doing your own creations. Jimmy, thank you for your contribution, sir. Does zero offset change your primitive lines? It changes. It's no longer a primitive. So, and that's how, like, if you're going to do node editing, you cannot node edit a primitive shape. If you're going to node edit a circle, or I didn't mean to do that, if you're going to note it a circle or a square, you have to convert it to a path, or you can do a 0 offset, and that's going to convert it to a path too. It doesn't, if you do a 0 offset, it does not change the dimensions. It'll still be the exact same size, but it does convert it from a primitive to a line or to a shape. They're not a screw ups. It's called experience. Can you add a tab in the middle of a living hinge? And if you're talking about wanting to do a tab here at the bottom of that, I guess technically you could, depending on your design. Like here, you don't need it because the shape is going to make. In fact, this is being held together right now under the friction of that, or the tension of that living hinge. There is nothing glued up on here. So yes, you probably could, but maybe a certain design might dictate it, but I don't know when that would be. Put that back together. Well, we ain't gonna worry about putting that back together now. Big question here. When you started with the 3 lines within the 3-inch rectangle, you put it on top of the tool line, but when you did your array, it was off the line with the 3 spaces of the tool line. Does it matter? Now, I did that so that you could see those spaces, but I wanted that living hinge to start at the bottom of that 3-inch line, and that's why I moved it up to that tool line. Because you don't want it to be, I wished I had, do I have a purse here? Yes, I do. Let me grab this. This is a perfect example. Oh, this is one of my clutches that I designed, and it incorporates a living hinge that allows the ladies to open it up and get to their things, their necessities. But whenever your tangent, wherever your straight line ends, that's where you want that living hinge to start, because you don't want it to be any higher, because then what happens is you'll have a place that it's too stiff and it's going to stick out. You want that living hinge to start where your straight line ends so it can begin to follow that contour. And that's why I moved it up to that tool path to start it where that segment ends. And if it goes, and like whenever I grouped them and all and then centered them up, I think the bottom of it actually extended a little into the 1-inch piece. So the living hinge came up a little bit higher than the actual 1 inch, but that's irrelevant. It's okay if it goes a little high, but you don't want it to be below where that tangent starts, or else it's not going to follow the contour of that shape. Great stream as always. Thanks for taking the time to help others. Bob, thank you. Thank you for your support. And guys, hopefully I've got some new people here. This is not a hobby for me. This is my job. So your financial contributions is how I get paid. And I do help others without being asked to be paid. I designed this file and gave it to everybody on Laser Maker's Realm 2 days ago. So, and it was the inspiration for this. So it's my job. Some hinges I was testing yesterday were too stiff. Now I know how to fix it. Thanks. You're most welcome, Chris. Now, Chris, there's also all kinds of different types of living hinges, and I'm going to show you that here in just a second once I make sure I've got all these questions, because I did a purse for Amy, Patrick's wife, and I did a different living hinge instead of these constant straight lines, which that looks okay. It's utilitarian and it looks okay. And even on this purse, it doesn't look terrible. But I've got another design on a living hinge that I did on Amy's purse, and it's really nice. And I'll show you that here in just a second. It's really easy to duplicate. The same process is just a different design. Second live stream and killing it. Thanks, Hobo. Thank you, Bordello. Make a keyhole slot in the back so you can slide it over a screw. Make a keyhole slot. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what Jack is saying is, in fact, let's jump over here to LightBurn very quickly. Select that, and we're going to switch. So what Jack is saying is come in here and just draw out. In fact, we'll use a rectangle instead of an oval. And put it in the center. Goes not that way, stupid. Undo. Center. Some of you may not be familiar with what a keyhole slot is. But you just take that shape. I was probably better off when I started. Weld those two together and cut that into the back of it. And you can slide a screw head through there. Make sure your hole's big enough for your screw head, and then slide it over that. And then that's a good way to hang it. Man, that's a great tip. Great tip. I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. So maybe I need to buy you margarita. Let's see here. And for those that don't know, Jack's a neighbor. I think he invited me to lunch today, but I was too busy trying to get prepared for this. So I haven't even eaten yet. So, all right. Yeah, I'm thinking of mounting holes at the top to mount them on the side of my cabinet. I'll glue the magnets up. Yeah. And I like that keyhole idea. And Chuck, why not just use a keyhole or two? Yep. Thanks, Ed. Ed is greatly appreciated. Yeah, and Midnight Sun's telling you guys, hit the thumbs up. If you guys, and I haven't even looked now, I looked last time at the end of the stream to see how many likes we had versus how many people were on, and it was exactly the number of viewers matched the thumbs up. Tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, it'll be live Laser Makers Realm, me, Patrick, and Rich. But I'm going to try to do more of this as needed and see where it goes. My intentions were not ever to do lives, but hey, it's where a lot of the revenue comes from. The advertisements on the videos aren't paying the bills. My patrons are what's supporting this channel right now. If it wasn't for my patrons, I would not be here. So HTL Jeremy's saying that there's 1,000 people watching. Oh, wait a minute. 100 people watching and only 74 likes. So if you're still watching, you hadn't hit that like button. And I do mean this, only if you've liked this and you've learned something, go down there and hit that like button. It helps with the analytics and it helps me in LightBurn or in YouTube. I think you should take the Saturday night slot. Oh, well, yeah, that's not impossible. It's not improbable. It might be what happens. We'll see. In my LightBurn art library, I have a HoboWithWood file where I keep all your files I have. For this one, I also included in the show notes a link to this video because I know I'll need it again. Great idea. Yeah, well, Larry, I appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot. All right, so now let's jump over here to LightBurn real quick because right now, where are we at? We've got the living hinge cut, and it's now cutting out the supports for the living hinge, and it'll have to go around and cut out the perimeter of the living hinge. So it's about done. But before we do that, and while it's finishing, let me come over here to LightBurn again and show you these optional living hinges. And I wish I had a quick way of showing you the living hinge on Amy's purse, but I don't have a photo of that. Patrick, maybe if you're still there, maybe you can grab a quick photo and send it in Facebook Messenger, and I can put it on screen here. That'd be the quickest way, but I don't know if you're still with me or not. But I want to show you what that looked like. I'll go to import, and I'm going to bring in that clutch. You see, and these are all the variations of the clutch design that I've built. I've got 15 variations before I finally got to one that I was kind of happy with. And let's get this up here out the way. All right. So this is another living hinge. And instead of just straight lines, this creates a really unique look to the living hinge. And then there's a variation on this where you take and do a very, very slight offset of that. In fact, let's grab this one. We'll ungroup all of that to where I can just grab one. Well, it's all ungrouped now. Group all that back together and do an offset outward. Don't need to do an inch. 0.02, no, 0.2, no, not point, 0.2. Yeah, like that. And say okay, and delete the originals. And you do a living hinge with that shape. And that who was my Australian buddy who was talking about your living hinges that were so stiff. Menu cut, and back to here and cut. Chris Gallagher, pretty sure it was you. If you have some living hinges that are really stiff, the more material you can take away and create more flexibility, the better off you are. But you don't want to compromise the structural ability of that hinge. So by relieving more material like that, that might even be an option that you could do. All right, so let's see where we're at here. It looks like it is. Yep, it has now cut out all of the side, both side pieces, and is now cutting out the living hinge. Let's see here. Ed, refresh your browser and you'll see the updated thumbs up. Yeah. 98 watching on YouTube. Wow. Wow. I'm grateful for you guys being here, and I'm very appreciative of your support. Thanks, guys. I love that hinge, Steve. Can't wait to try it on the project. Yep. The Three Amigos. Well, that's Chevy Chase and all those guys, wasn't it? Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin. What's the other little guys? And then the Canadian, really funny. That was the Three Amigos. That's a funny movie. Oh my! You got me thinking about that purse and putting a strap on it to use it as a tackle box. Hey, Russ, that's an idea. that would work. This design is on HoboWithWood.com. The basic file, and it's not that difficult to make. And yeah, that I've been marketing this and selling it as a ladies' clutch But man, I've been going about that wrong. I need to get rid of these little hearts and the frilly stuff and put some fish logos on there. And yes, sir, that's a tackle box by all means. Great idea, Russ. All right, so the laser's finished. Martin Short, yes, thank you, Lori. Martin Short, love him. Is there any particular reason you put the tabs on the sides and the slots of the hinge? Wait a minute. Is there any particular reason you put the tabs on the? Yes. Yes. Because let me get this off here and you'll see. We don't need that no more. All right, so read this again. Is there any particular reason you put the tabs on the sides and the slots on the hinge instead of putting tabs here? And I'm guessing the only way you could put tabs here if you did it external, so you'd move these pieces outboard. Well, when it comes to the living hinge, I mean, you could, but the problem is if you put those outboard here, like so, and then there's outboard over here. Well, now you've got no way to force and hold that shape. So it's kind of like the rib in an airplane wing is what this is. By putting this inside here, snapping that together. And you know what I didn't do? I did not resize my slots and tabs. Because I designed it with 3mm wood, but this piece is 2.8 millimeters. And I meant to show you guys that, and we'll show you that here in a second, because there is a trick on this design that you got to watch out for, but this will still go together. But by putting that in the middle, now that as you wrap that around and up on into place, that's going to force that into that shape, that your desired shape. And that's why those are on the inside like that and not out on the sides. And I don't know if I'm gonna get this with one hand. Yep, that's in. And that's in. And because of the tension of that living hinge, you just see me put that together with no glue, and it's sturdy. It ain't going anywhere. And that's even with the wrong size slots. That's a 3mm slot, and it should be 2.8 millimeters. But that's a sturdy little piece because the tension of that spring and that rib being on the inside, forcing that down, it's creating the tension and it's pulling against each other. So that's why they're on the inside and not on the perimeter. Let's close that, make that a little quieter. We'll actually cut it off now. All right. Now, let's see. Yeah, Chris, replace those hearts with fish. Absolutely. Yep, burn's done. We got that off. Chris, yes, my scrap is just, I've got a pile of skeletons over there, and I go to it. In fact, I made this from a skeleton. I don't throw nothing away until there's no meat left on the bones. Nothing. Hello, Jerry. Yes, El Guapo. That was actually Patrick. That was my nickname at one of the local Mexican restaurants. I was El Guapo, and for those who don't speak Spanish, El Guapo is the handsome man. El Guapo. Some people like to call me El Gordo, but I was El Guapo. And yes, beware of El Guapo. Thank you. We'll have to rewatch. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here, Jerry. Refresh your browser if you're not seeing all the thumbs up. Yeah, Jerry, today is just me solo. Tomorrow is going to be me, Patrick, and Rich on the Laser Makers realm. This is me, Hobo with Wood, on my channel. And then tomorrow, the Laser Makers realm is moving to a new time slot. And we're going to give it a try and see what happens. That's, according to analytics, that's when all of our viewers are online, is Sunday at 3 in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see what happens. I had to watch the video you sent me a couple of times, and I finally fixed the ship design. Many thanks. Good, good, good. All right, now, before we wrap this up, I'm going to show you what I failed to do with the resizing of these slots, and the one thing you have to watch out for when you're doing this. So let's pander back over here to LightBurn. We're going to get rid of all of my clutch. Now, what I should have done before I sent the job to the laser, and I'll get rid of the keyhole temporarily, is I should have resized my slots and tabs. Now, right now, in version 1.4.04, the way this works is not going to be the way it works when they finally release 1.5. Right now, you go into Tools, Resize Slots and Selection. Old material thickness was 3 millimeters. Our new material thickness was 2.8. And I've got my tolerance level set to 0.5 millimeter. Because if you don't have that set, if you've got a 0.1 or something less, or less than 0.5 millimeter, you may not see all of those. So increase your tolerance level when you're resizing slots to at least 0.5 millimeter to ensure you get everything you're looking for. But right here is an example of the problem. It's looking at these as slot depth. These are not slots. These are not slots. These protrusions are the tabs. But it's recognizing this as a slot and wanting to resize it. So if you weren't paying attention, you could screw up your design. Slot width. There we got slot width. But also, if you look right here, we got a warning. Your selection contains the following unsupported items: grouped shapes. And since it's seeing group shapes, it's not seeing these top slots up here. So we have to cancel, ungroup everything. And now if we go back to Tools, Resize Slots and Selection, and Slot Width, now you're able to see all those slots. And that's the only slot width you have to adjust. But if you change your slot width and say OK, right now the tool closes. And now you got to come back up here, open it back up again, resize slots and selection. Now we need to change our tab height and say OK, and the tool closes. Well, in version 1.5, when you open this resize slots and selection, you're going to have the same three options: resize slot depth, slot width, and tab height. But there'll be another option down here that will say apply. You cannot select more than one adjustment at a time because, like I said, LightBurn cannot distinguish a slot from a tab. It doesn't know which is which. And if you were try and tell it, and say you did have slots depths that you needed to change and tab heights that you needed to change, and you tried to do them both at the same time, since LightBurn recognizes it either way, it would just confuse the heck out of it and go, I quit, and go home. And that's why you can only do one at a time, and you have to be careful about what you're looking at and what you're adjusting. But the way that I make these, right now, it's recognizing those as a slot. The way you make it not see those as a slot is you go into both of those in node editing. And when it's looking for slots and tabs, it's looking for 4 nodes. So those 4 make that tab. But those 4 make that slot. Well, that's not a slot. So just come right here and insert a middle node. Just hit the letter M to put a node in the middle, there and there, and again over here and here. And now when you go back in there and look at Tools, Resize Slots and Selection, it no longer sees those as an option to change. It cannot screw up your file even if you tried to. It's now fixed. change your tab height, you're done, you're okay. So that's what I should have done before I sent the job to the laser, but because this file is so tight and that's measured exactly the length it should be, the tension of that is holding this together, even with the excessive size slot. And it ain't going to stand up. All right, guys. So are there any questions? I'm going to scroll back up here to the last super thanks I think I seen. Let's see. Nope. This was the last question I answered. Is there any particular reason? Drew, and I don't know if that's Drew from Michigan or just, but Drew, did that answer your question as why I've got those in there? Burn. Jerry, good day. Yes. Yeah, I have to rewatch. Looking for questions. Yeah, Chris, I will still be awake at 2 a.m. LOL. And you were one of the first people that I thought of. We've got actually several viewers in Laser Makers Realm in Australia, and that new time slot tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time or -5 Greenwich Mean Time, it's going to be a little inconvenient for you guys. But we're hoping that we're going to see, for what few that might not be able to continue to see it, we're going to pick up an excessively large number of people who are missing it now. We hope. If we downloaded the file you had on Patreon, will we have to resize the tabs? Yeah, you're going to have to resize the slots and tabs to your material, whatever material size you're using. And because I actually kind of got lucky there that went together and stayed together, because I think in the photograph of one of them I seen, it looked like somebody was using about 2.5 millimeter, or you maybe even using some 2 millimeter stuff. And if you try to put it together with a 3-inch slot, it's not going to do that great. So you need to resize your slots and tabs for the thickness of your material. Go back, buffering. Super glue will hold it. Yeah, super glue. Yeah, it'll hold it. And glue yourself to it too. But I learned something on, of all places, watching Bones today before coming to get ready for this. There was an episode of Bones that was on, and somebody had super glued themselves to a piece of artwork. And the way they got the guy separated from the artwork was smearing him with peanut butter. So if you glue yourself to your wood and you can't get it apart, if you got some peanut butter, from what I've seen on Bones, the oils in the peanut butter will dissolve that super glue and you can break that bond. According to Hollywood. You have to let me know if that works. And then you have a tasty piece of wood after you're done too. Lost you. You're back. I'm hoping that's something on your end, Richard. You're the only one that's mentioned it so far. Hopefully I'm not having an issue there. Thank you so much for the info. Thank you, Michael, for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Another great session. How long are we at? We're an hour and 30. We're at 90 minutes, and that's good. Thanks for the great information. Thank you. Just want to stop by and say hello. I have a Christmas party to go to, so I'll catch you tomorrow and the next time. And be sure, if you're still here, be sure and watch the replay of this, because there's lots of good information in here. Informative as always. And thank you. And that's NEPA. And I'm wondering if that's the same NEPA that used to be NIPA. And maybe you changed it so people would know how to say NEPA. I think I was always saying it right. Nope. You were buffering. Oh, wow. Okay. Hope that doesn't become an issue. Well, guys, you have my vote for Teacher of the Year. Well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I tell you, man, I gave my teachers absolute grief. I pity to every one of my teachers. Once I got out of grade school, I was hell on wheels, boy. Says you did buffer twice for a few seconds. And oops. Nope. Why? Mike said nope, does not work. Just use nail polish remover. So I'm guessing, Mike, you've tried that peanut butter? I don't know. Jerry said he refreshed and the buffer went away. Great show, informative. I'll be rewatching. Yeah, it's definitely worth a rewatch. Give them a golden apple. Very informative as always. Guys, thank you. Thank you for your support. Those opportunities to contribute to the channel are scrolling there at the bottom of the channel. For everybody that contributed tonight in the way of a super thanks, I cannot thank you enough, because if I try to, I've told you, a lot of you to watch, my emotions are, in fact, I got a little bit choked there in this one. I had to catch myself. I cannot express the level of gratitude that I have, because I said, this is my job. This is how I'm keeping these lights on. So thank you for your support, and we'll figure out what's going to be in the next live stream. And maybe this will be, if Laser Maker's Realm stays at Sunday, maybe this will be my new time slot. But the one thing that is crazy about this StreamYard, whenever you tell it to end the stream, it just seems like it takes forever. So as usual, I'm just going to come over here and click end stream, and I'll just keep talking to you till we're gone, because I don't know how long it actually takes. It's kind of crazy. It seems